should count, but it's so cute to do it for some reason. Okay. All right. Let's just get going. Hey, everybody. It's Ashley. This is Creep It Real. And today I have none other than very special guest Bianca with me.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for coming back again.
Hey, thanks for having me on as a guest 3 times in a row.
I know. That's a lot of guest spots, man. I think you're the most prominent guest this podcast has ever had.
I think so.
Okay, everybody. Hello. It's been a few weeks. We're back. We have a much anticipated episode today that I'm telling you is creepy as hell. And I mean, I'm also telling you that y'all were excited to hear that we were going to do it. So I don't know why I have to inform you of that, considering it's your emotion. But regardless, we're very excited to be covering the black-eyed children and kind of black-eyed people in general. Yeah, some creepy black-eyed people. We're doing it. Okay, so all right. I was just waiting for you to just be like, yeah,
Yay!
I'm so excited. So anyway, as we do, let's just get going. Good thing I started out with an so now you have to delete this whole sentence out. Sorry. And you don't have to, but
I won't.
I can do it. No, you're gonna. I'm gonna make you.
Oh, okay.
At knife point.
Oh,
Okay.
From across the country. Okay, that's fine.
I have a long knife over here.
That's what she said?
Also, you don't know what kind of dimensional abilities I have.
That's true. I'm going to need you to teach me those because...
I know. Well, kind of weird that I have these and I haven't made use of them in any other way but just stab you.
In any productive way, it's fine.
Threaten you to do whatever I was threatening you to do. I don't even remember now.
Delete a sentence, Ashley.
Oh my God. Okay, so let's just get going. Like I said 15 minutes ago. So to be honest with you, even though I have been wanting to do this topic for a long time, I really went into it kind of thinking, all right, it's kind of silly sounding when you say black-eyed children. It kind of just sounds a little bit silly. But as I started researching and reading my book that I was reading, I was literally in a house full of people kind of like, oh God, what's going to come at the door for me? I was really freaked out. It's an unsettling topic. And, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, this is, not hoity-toity. I just have that phrase in my head because of you, Bianca.
I'm recording in a closet, so I'm going to let you know there's nothing hoity-toity about this situation.
What a little slummer you are, recording in a closet. How dare you? Okay, anyway, but, what was I even talking about? Hokey. That's the word I was looking for. You might think, oh, that sounds a little hokey. Because I definitely agree that at first I was like, yeah, it kind of does. But I'm telling you, it is creepy as hell. And this is going to be 2 episodes of you getting ready to pee your pants every time you hear someone knock on your front door. So buckle up, everybody. The encounters nearly always begin with a knock. Usually there'll be nobody around for miles, and then all of a sudden there's 1, 2, or a group of kids that appear at your door knocking. And it's not a normal human being knock, knock, knock. It's this consistent, just droning knock. Like they've never done it before, or they are relentless in their pursuit to let them in the house, or car, or apartment, or hotel, or various other places where people have encountered these little creepers.
Or you should feel safe, at least. Because when I get into my car, I'm like, oh, well, now there's nobody after me. So
nothing can ever get me here.
Right. I swear to God,
Right.
If somebody knocked on my door, though, on my car door, I do that thing where I pretend like I don't see them. Like I'm like, I look right down and I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
When has somebody knocked on your window? Is it
homeless people?
Okay. I'm used to that now.
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say that's the only time anybody knocks on my window. If it's a homeless person. But regardless, you were saying you feel safe, and I was going to say, there's always that urban legend of someone being in the back seat, in your car. That always makes me feel a little bit not safe.
Yeah.
Okay, so these kids, not only do they knock on your door in a weird way and stand there like creeps, they also ask to be let in, and it's like they need to be let in, which is unsettling. It's like it's one thing if you're knocking on the door and asking for help in some way, but if you're like, I need in your house, bitch. That's how I'm getting it on this story. It's scary. It's like they're saying it in so many words. So the requests that they ask for, they're seemingly tailored to the location of the encounter. They're either asking for a ride if you're in a car, or something like coming in and watching TV if you live in a house. And at the outset, they seem really polite, though it's almost too much so. I think that's kind of awkward if there's a child that's a little like overly polite. Maybe Bianca, you're used to it.
As an only
Father.
child, I am.
Yes.
Yes, Father. Yes, Daddy. So I was reading that they often do use the mannerisms and the speech patterns of an adult. Which, yes, that is kind of creepy.
It's off-putting. Yeah.
Sometimes they even have the voice of an adult, which, I mean, can you imagine a toddler with the voice of a man? Like,
no. Well, okay. First of all, there's not toddlers coming to the door.
You know what? They're not toddlers. They're
No.
typically between. They look like they're between 6 and 16 years old.
Yeah.
So no, not toddlers.
Not
but-
toddlers, but somewhat close. But their voice or the way they talk, some witnesses have described it as programmed almost, like it was a computer telling you that you have mail, and like formal and polite, but also at the same time it's awkward and strained. Which, I mean, okay, I won't start going off on tangents yet. So. Many people who have had experiences with them, they say they felt like the kids were trying to hypnotize them. Like they were caught in a trance until the overwhelming fear that the kids elicited broke them from it. Which, I mean, I've never been hypnotized before, but the monotonous tones that they use and repetitive speech does definitely sound like hypnotism. Who knows what they're trying to do. And they also tend to use slightly disconcerting requests such as, just let us in. This won't take long. Or, we're only kids. Don't worry about it. Which is like very troubling. I mean, What do you mean what won't take long? And we'll go into more detail on those, what people say, but in a little while. But just kind of like a basic gloss over. Not only that, but the kids become increasingly insistent that they need to come inside, like they need it, as if they're running out of time for something. And they become more demanding the more the adult seems to resist them, which is bizarre. It's kind of like they don't realize that turning into a tyrant isn't going to change anybody's mind. But obviously, whatever they are, they don't quite get that fact. They just keep repeating the request over and over. So we're going to talk in depth later about some encounters people have had. So this droning, almost hypnotic effect of the kid's speech has been reported on numerous occasions from people who have had experiences with these black-eyed children. So one witness described it like this. He says, I felt compelled to do just what they were asking me to do, even felt my body moving, but at the same time there was some deep fear that kicked in. I felt like if I did listen to this little boy, and if I did what he said, then I might not be around anymore. Why should a little kid scare me like that? So something about the way they are speaking to these people is creating a deep fear inside of them that is making them feel like their life is at risk, which is very bizarre to think with a child.
Yeah, I think people just inherently gravitate towards trusting a child. And I had read that people typically start to comply with them even though they start to feel unsettled, and that their complying is against their own judgment. Some people had claimed that they had felt like a low level of mind control to get them to comply. But again, if that is the case, I think it would be some sort of empathy that most human beings have towards children and wanting to assist them.
Maybe so. Who
Most
knows?
people.
But I'm like, yeah. I mean, I do too. I'm not a heartless person.
Oh, you're not?
Oh my God. I want to shut up. Okay. Something about their persistence and their oddly outdated language begins to cast doubt in these people's minds about what the intentions of these children are, though. And that's when they begin to notice their physical appearance a little more closely, which is not quite normal, to say the least.
No.
What is it like?
They're described as having pale skin, dark black eyes with no differentiation between their sclera, pupil, or iris, and they're occasionally reported to have blue or bluish tinted skin, akin to a corpse. Like we mentioned before, they speak in a pretty monotone voice. They don't breathe when they're speaking. So, oh, it's creepy.
Yeah.
They're often seen playing games and singing nursery rhymes, which, if you've seen any horror movie, is there literally anything creepier than a child singing a damn nursery rhyme? No.
Well, there's a few things more creepy. I mean, I can think of a couple. But as far as their appearance, it's been described by certain people as if they're attempting to look like a normal kid, but something is just not quite right about them, which... When I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds exactly like Skinwalker Ranch, when that giant wolf seemed like it was legit, but there was just something not quite right about it. And that's the same thing about like skinwalkers. They say it's like they're mimicking a human, but it's just slightly off. And I find that to be so crazy. There's always these similar characteristics between different cryptid. I know this isn't a cryptid, but different cryptids or from like paranormal phenomena, that there are always these similar characteristics, and we'll talk about even more of those as we go on today. Right. But it's just makes me wonder what the correlation between all of this stuff is. That's also something which we haven't talked about yet, but something when we do cover Men in Black, which I know we're thinking about doing soon, that they also seem like they're a regular old person, but then there's just something slightly off about them. Yeah, it's like they're just trying to impersonate somebody and they're not getting it quite right. Yeah, so the kids are often seen wearing clothing that's described as old-fashioned. It's typically baggy. A lot of people will say it's possibly handmade or passed down, or it's just super ragged and ill-fitting.
Furthermore, with the description, if you do take a look at them and you discover that their eyes are black, they usually get super angry and more insistent about complying with their requests.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's like, what do you expect, dude? That's the one thing that kind of trips me up about this is it's like, so you're, whatever you are, you're impersonating this kid for whatever reason, which we'll get into perhaps in a little while. But what is the reason you can't just change your eyes to a normal eye color for a second? What kind of impression are you trying to give? So
kind of like the incubus and the succubus, how there was that one incubus that can't cover its dorsal hole.
Yeah. I mean, it's like maybe maybe you're some supernatural entity, but you just don't have 100% power here. Maybe that's it. Right. Who knows? As far as the eyes are concerned, people will say that they're like shiny. They look like they're shiny and liquid, which, I always reference Supernatural on the show. I swear. I think I talk about it every episode. But on Supernatural,
the demons
have black eyes that are very shiny and liquid. And I always think, I know that show is really silly, but I love it also. But also, does Jensen Ackles just get better with age or what, dude? I saw a picture of him earlier and I was like, is this real life? Like, what?
People talk about Jared Padalecki like he's God's gift to man, but goddamn Jensen Ackles, man. I cannot.
Jensen. I'm just hoping I run into him somewhere around here. I mean, I know nothing's going to happen. All I'm saying is I just want to look at him in person and be like, and I gotta think of a supernatural setting or something, dude. Because I just remembered he lives here, so I'm like,
That's what I was gonna say. Isn't he from there?
I'm just gonna go ringing a bell all over town. Please order a favor from me. Okay, he's happily married with lots of delightful children, and they're the most delightful family. Okay, anyway, so. Oh, but that definitely sounds like a supernatural thing. I know that probably goes far beyond supernatural, but you know what? It's my frame of reference here, so whatever. But a little lowdown on your old eyeballs. So most healthy humans have a white sclera. It's very thin tissue that makes up 5/6 of the outer surface of the eye. So human eyes are filled with a clear gelatinous material, which must be clear to allow light to pass through unobstructed from the lens to the retina. A person that has solid black eyes would be pretty much mostly blind because little to no light could enter the eye. So, you know, it's unusual to have black eyes in the first place, but also to be getting around, you know, a group of you just with some sort of terrible eye condition where you're all blind and somehow you're just, you know, flitting around town fast as hell. I don't think it's happening, you know, but we'll like, well, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, obviously it could be, there's something untoward going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So one lady, in regard to their like weird kind of impersonation and their skin color, she described what she thought was the kid having an unnaturally tinted olive tone, and it seemed to her like it looked just like a spray tan, but it was just the wrong color. Like they got sprayed somewhere before they came out for this little visit.
Like they went to Walgreens and got some Sally Hansen, and where they were like, "Oh, this is normal."
Or like,
can you imagine some black-eyed children like at the counter at Walgreens?
This is it, please. Sally Hansen.
And a pack of gum.
And a pack of gum. Can I have a pack of American Spirits, please? Because they're just trying to get cigarettes because they think Walgreens will give it to them. So, regardless, I kind of thought it as they were getting sprayed down in their spaceship or something. Who knows?
Oh, you went that way with it.
Yes. You know, because this lady says that she believed what happened was they were wanting to conceal their true skin color by applying makeup. We'll see. We'll see. So as we kind of talked about with their monotonous tones, they're not breathing when they're talking or standing there. This little like hypnosis that they're trying to do seems to elicit a fight or flight response in most people, which has led to many of them slamming the door or getting away from this kid as quickly as possible. So like we were saying earlier, kind of working against themselves a little bit here. One person even said it felt like the reaction his body had to being around these kids was like infrasound, which I was like, holy shit. We've talked about that in a million episodes of different episodes that we've done, like Montauk, Dyatlov, MK Ultra. You know, some animals use infrasound as a defense mechanism, which also causes a variety of reactions in the human nervous system. So who the heck knows what's going on here? But what we do know is that most people who have had these encounters have come away from them absolutely terrified. So, I mean, come on. I mean, who's not going to? You have some weird, who knows what, black-eyed kids at your door and demanding to be let in. I don't think that's going to be an experience that you come away from like, Jesus, that was a great day. I'm totally not afraid to be at my front door anymore.
Well, I mean, like you had mentioned, you were reading about a book. Or you were reading a book.
I was reading about a book.
You were reading a book about the black-eyed kids, and even you were like,
Yeah. I have a door right beside my bed that goes out to the balcony area or whatever. I mean, it's on the 3rd floor, but I'm like, I gotta pull that shade down because I do not want to wake up in the middle of the night and look over and there's like a kid staring at me. Ugh. Something staring at me in a nighttime window has been one of my greatest fears ever since perhaps Scream. Maybe. Ugh. Are you too young for that movie?
No, I'm not. I just never. I've never
What?
seen it. I know.
Holy shit. That's like my favorite. That's
was
one of
actually-
my favorite movies of all time.
I was actually talking to somebody about that recently, and they were like, "Oh no, we need to see that." Like,
It is a masterpiece. I've said that about a couple movies lately, but I'm being serious. I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it.
so these entities or the stories claim that these entities must be invited into your house or car, which is very similar to how a vampire has to be invited into your space as well. I know that when I think one of my favorite movies was Let the Right One In.
The American one or the original one?
No, girl, the original one.
Hell yeah, man. That was a good one.
That one was a good one. I think it was actually called Let Me In.
Let Me In.
And I remember, I remember that was a good one. And you know, as I was reading and researching on this topic, that's the only thing I could think of.
It did remind me of that, yeah.
Right? But I don't know if she was supposed to be a vampire, or if she was supposed to be a black-eyed kid, or what was up with that.
So that's what I was thinking when you were saying that is, like, first of all, like, what came first, the vampire or the black-eyed person? Secondly, what is the black-eyed person? We don't know. Maybe it is some sort of... First of all, I'm sitting here talking as though I'm 100% certain that vampires are real, but you know, regardless, what I'm saying is that who knows what's what. You know, there's just so much. Like maybe there's one single thing that's manifesting as all of these things. You know what I mean? We just like who freaking knows? Okay,
For
but
sure.
we'll get into more theories and stuff at some point. But yeah, so who knows? Who freaking knows? Oh, okay, so some common descriptions of black-eyed children across many accounts from many different encounters contain the words evil, predatory, and sinister. Those are 3 words that are repeated over and over and over. So this isn't just some random person thinking these kids are creepy or whatever these entities are. It's a common theme. Everybody says these things seem to want to hunt them down or something like that, which, I mean... The fact that that's the feeling they give you whenever they're just standing there asking to be let in is so creepy.
Yeah.
It obviously creates a lot of inner conflict in the person that's experiencing them because it's difficult for them to pinpoint the origin of their fear or the feeling that the kids are sinister because, after all, they're just kids, you know? Which, I you know, that's repeated so often, but it's also like, well, kids can be really fucking creepy. You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah.
We all know kids can do some crazy stuff, but still, it also, when you see a kid asking or in need of help or asking for help, it does typically, with most people, elicit some kind of sympathetic response. You
Absolutely.
know? So obviously, it's kind of a struggle in their head about what the heck's going on, because we want to kind of protect them, but at the same time, these could be a little demon hunter, or not a demon hunter, but like a
Actual
demon
demons.
that's hunting you, even though I don't believe in demons. Demons are probably the least scary thing, you know. It's like, oh, demon, that ruins it for me, but whatever, some sort of terror. In addition to all of that creepy shit, the black-eyed children are commonly described as being able to appear suddenly out of nowhere and also move very rapidly, which doesn't sit well with me.
No.
You know?
No.
I'm not into it. One lady said that she glanced back at her door, just a quick glance, and when she turned back, the kids were so much closer to her that she didn't know how it was possible, and that she didn't hear them move, and she couldn't imagine how they could have done that quickly. She said it was like they could just somehow glide across the floor without making a sound. When I typed that out last night, I got heebie-jeebies just thinking about it.
You did?
I got heebie-jeebies and I don't like it. I don't know why that freaks me out. If these were all just little Chris Browns running around, that would be one thing.
Not
But
Chris
it's a much more creepy glide across the floor than
For
a Chris
sure.
Brown glide.
Yeah.
And similarly, they're also described as being able to completely vanish in the blink of an eye, which, cool.
Oh, you're not a fan of that either?
No. This one person said there wasn't anywhere for them to go. There was nothing for them to hide behind, nowhere to run. They were just gone without a trace. So where did they go? And I mean, this is bringing all sorts of dimensional ideas into my head. So these scary abilities have led to speculation that the black-eyed children can fly, teleport, or, I just got ahead of myself, move between dimensions, because, you know, that everybody knows that's my favorite theory about everything. I'm like, it's dimensional. Interdimensional beings. There's a dimension.
Dietlove. No, not Dietlove.
Well, all the Skinwalker Ranch stuff.
Skinwalker. Everything.
You're right. Anything that's paranormal-ish, I'm like, it's a dimensional thing. That's what it is. Well, because, I mean, it's such a great explanation. It's like
literally when we started this episode, you said, I can move between dimensions.
Right.
I know. Your favorite
I'm obsessed
thing.
With it. I'm obsessed. That's what I was talking about. I've been saying this forever, but I would love to do episodes about string theory, because that was like the first thing that opened my mind up to the fact that maybe there are other dimensions and sometimes they overlap. And then what happens? What are these common characteristics that make things all tied together? I just have to wonder if it's not as complicated as we're trying to make it out to be, you know? Maybe this is how our little pea brains interpret different, I don't know, different interdimensional beings when they present themselves in different places. Like, who the hell knows? Why am I getting into this right now?
I don't know, but we need to move forward. Do you want me to cut that?
No.
Okay.
No. If it's about dimensions, keep it in.
Okay, always.
Okay. So even a trained police officer claimed that a group of black-eyed children completely vanished from his field of vision and left absolutely no trace of ever being present in the first place. And I'm not, you know, whatever, but police officers do have some training with, like, tracking, and I would think, you know, more than just, like, some layperson off the street, they would be able to maybe find signs of these kids being there whenever they had seen them. And then, of course, they weren't. So, okay. Many of the accounts share another disturbing quality in regard to the black-eyed children that we have heard before, which is a putrid odor of rotten eggs, decaying garbage, rotting meat, kind of sulfury. Come on, man. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm just like, that's the same exact damn thing that we heard at Skinwalker Ranch when the wolf was spotted, when the cows were mutilated, when the family and researchers noted there was a similar odor to that, exactly what that just described. And I also heard this in relation to, I think, some poltergeist activity on maybe the Enfield haunting or something on the last podcast or somewhere, where they were saying every time this activity stirred up, they would get this kind of rotten egg, like sulfuric smell. What
Also,
the hell,
demons.
Man?
Demons are supposedly they leave behind that kind of an sulfuric odor.
Like, quote unquote demons. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it really gets me excited. I'm sorry, but it's just, this is bizarre. They all share these common traits. I don't know. It means something. It definitely means something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what, but it does.
But it's something.
The smell is often only noted after the children have disappeared from the area. It also has been known to cause lightheadedness and nausea. And the smell can linger around for hours after an encounter, just like the goddamn Skinwalker Ranch. Okay. I'm sorry.
You're so excited about this.
This is my favorite kind of stuff. It just gets me so excited. Okay, anyway. You have any more deets on the little kids that you want to share with us?
Just when they are seen outside, they're usually, like, doing creepy kid stuff and, like, playing or whatever. Yeah.
What is that one song? Ring
Around the Rosie.
Which is a creepy song about death, anyway.
You know what? I had read that they do, the nursery rhymes that they do sing are, like, in the bramble bush or something like that, where, Old Bent Man. And where
old?
This old, yeah.
Old Bent Man?
Hold on, what is it? It's like Crooked Man or something like that.
Oh my God, Bianca.
Where it's like, and I looked it up on YouTube. I looked it up everywhere. I tried to find the exact nursery rhyme, but it's something about an old crooked man walking down a crooked street, and he.
I'm gonna throw up.
Why?
That is grossing me out right now. I'm sorry, continue because it's creepy.
And he goes, and like the nursery rhyme goes, he picks up a crooked sixpence, and then some more verses. Well, eventually he hangs himself. So this is the nursery rhyme that they're singing, right?
Yeah.
And so anyways, going back to what I was saying, when they are seen outside playing and doing creepy horror film kid shit, they'll immediately stop playing and stare at you, if you can imagine that. And if possible, at that point, approach you or ask for a ride home. Which...
Take a chill pill, kids.
Yeah, you don't need to
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Oh, that gives me... okay. I don't know why those nursery rhymes... Like, what in the world is this bent man, broken back guy? I mean, whatever it is. Don't tell me that one again. Okay, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So... There are some less common attributes that are associated with black-eyed kids. They aren't necessarily across the board as the ones we just discussed, but some witnesses have heard a strange animal-like scream when they were present. Okay. And others could swear that the kids multiplied when they turned their head briefly, which is also not a big deal, you know? I mean, I'm sure it's something natural that happened there. On a few rare occasions, there have been surveillance cameras present with the black-eyed children encounters, but when it comes down to playing it back, they're not there, or the camera's been corrupt, or the video has been corrupted, or it just has like a glitch at that moment. I know that's such a...
I don't like it.
I know, I know some of you out there are like, well, that is the stupidest excuse I've ever heard. But you know what? Sometimes, like, I'm sorry, it's going to be referenced a million times, but at Skinwalker Ranch, they tried to capture stuff, and they had, like, the highest tech equipment possible. They had all these professionals, and it was like, stuff just went wrong, or... you know, stuff just got corrupted. It just seems like maybe there is some sort of effect. Maybe it's not even something like a ghost, you know, wound. What's the word I'm looking? Waved its magic wand over the video and made himself not show up on it. But maybe there's like an energy and an I don't know.
So Ashley, I know we're gonna talk about that later. But are you thinking that it's something like extraterrestrial?
I don't know. I really don't.
Okay.
We'll see. I don't want to give it away.
We'll discuss.
Yeah. But anyway, so as you can tell, or as you now know, those are some creepy little shits. Okay, I don't want any black-eyed kids coming around my house. I don't want them coming to my door of any kind. I don't want them anywhere near me. I want them far, far away. And I am thoroughly done talking about their characteristics.
All right. So you ready to go on to the history of the black-eyed kids?
Yes.
Okay.
So historical accounts of black-eyed kids are somewhat difficult to come by, in good part because the black eyes being the main focus of the story is kind of a modern byproduct of the internet and its ability to spread information so easily. This helped not only spread Brian Bethel's story, who we'll talk about in a little while, but an ever-growing number of accounts from people all over the world who had experienced something similar. I think I kind of mentioned it earlier to you, but the black eyes used to only be one aspect of the story, and beings with black eyes were usually interpreted as ghosts, demons, vampires, or other supernatural entities. And it was really just dependent on the location of the story and in large part the cultural beliefs of the people who were telling them.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, you know, I wonder, I guess what my thought process about this was, what shifted that made the black eyes part of it be the main focus, even if it, you know, just because the internet let the stories be spread more quickly and widely. I wonder why the black eyes went from being just one aspect of the story, or just like, oh, and it had black eyes, to being like, these kids have black eyes. But I mean, at the same time, there are other aspects of the story that are part of it.
Well, I think it has to do with the specifically Brian Bethel's story, because when he told his story, that was what he focused on. And
Right.
I know that we touched on him very lightly about 20 seconds ago. But for anybody who doesn't know, he was a journalist from the Abilene Reporter News, which is in Abilene, Texas. Shout out to Texas and anybody from there, Ashley.
Not Abilene. That
No, just Texas.
Just kidding, Abilene people. Just kidding.
It's not Iowa, dude, so it's fine. But I know that the story had gained notoriety because of him, and his is considered the godfather or grandfather to the Black Eyed Kids story, even though there are historical accounts of this entity. He's what established the prominence of them in the modern day, and actually his story is considered one of the original creepypastas.
Which we're going to read his story very shortly. And it's definitely, there's a reason why it's the godfather of all Black-eyed children's stories, for sure. So in China, ghost stories are common, and if the spirit is malevolent, they will typically have red or black eyes, and beings with black eyes are called hungry ghosts. As in the case with other historical accounts of beings with black eyes, the eyes are never the focus of the tale, just additional evidence from the storyteller to affirm that the entity was evil. One story from southern China is about an angry spirit that terrorizes a village, bringing misfortune to the people that live there. She's angry about her wrongful death and is doomed to haunt the village, and was said to be responsible for numerous disasters in the area. Encounters with her are said to be a I knew I was going to say that, are said to be a harbinger of misfortune and bring about miscarriages and infant deaths to those who see her. The ghost was described as a young girl, around 14 years old, who would appear in the village late at night. She would often knock on people's doors asking to be let in. They said she would appear very suddenly, and it wasn't wise to stay out very late, especially when there was a full moon, because of her. The vengeful spirit always wore a long white gown and was barefoot, with long dark hair and pale skin. Her eyes were solid black. The Chinese tales are very similar to those of the Onyo, or vengeful ghost of Japan. The Onyo stories date back to the 8th century and are based on the concept that angry spirits of the dead influence the world of the living. The Onyo tales usually involve the murder of a woman whose spirit becomes the Onyo and then returns to the physical world to seek vengeance. These stories typically depict the woman dressed in a white dress with pale skin, and her eyes are typically fucked up in some way. One is usually much larger than the other. In modern versions, the Onyo is depicted with solid black eyes. These types of tales of supernatural beings are woven all throughout Japan's culture and have been incredibly important to that culture for a very long time.
So which I think these are like Shinto beings?
They're like what? Do I not know what you're saying?
So these are like are these like Shinto spirits? Okay, so
I don't know what that means. Let's elucidate to me on this.
So Shinto is a mostly dead religion in Japan. That focuses a lot on the spirits and, spirit of trees and spirit of the river and everything like that.
Okay.
Again, it is mostly it is mostly dead, but there are some Japanese people that do still practice Shintoism.
Okay.
And I actually might be wrong. Maybe it isn't mostly dead, but as far as what I know, it is.
Okay.
So that was just my question. Are these Shinto beliefs? But
I think it's a very popular amongst like anyone. I don't honestly, from what it appears, that this is like something that in America we're all very like skeptical and like, meh, we're like
how are we?
Meh, we're too American for that shit. Like they wouldn't mess with this, and and there it's like this is part of the culture, at least from what I have interpreted from what I've read. That and I as far as like when you think about their horror films, like that sounds like every horror
The Grudge.
villain or whatever that you want to call him, you
Yeah.
know, that I've seen in Japanese horror movies. But anyway, but I just think it's kind of interesting how ingrained in the culture it is there, whereas here we literally just think it's bullshit. That
We're
there
so
are
skeptical of
ghosts
everything.
so yeah, we're like, we're too good for all this. I think it's kind of cool that, I mean, not to say that I necessarily believe, I don't know what I believe, you know? I mean, I really am open-minded. I think it's annoying when people are so certain about stuff like that. I'm trying to clear my throat at certain people that
I don't even know who that would be.
refuse to believe in anything. So one of the more historical kind of stories from America that comes from 1950, which isn't that long ago, but you know, it's historical here. So it comes from a rural area of Virginia, which I made a little note. Holly, watch out. Don't let yourself get taken in by a black-eyed kid. That has been passed down to each generation of this in this family since it happened. And it said that each member of this family that told the story did so with the exact same details as the one before them. So it's not like it's grown and changed over the years, supposedly. So this is a family with generations of farmers and fishermen, hard-working country folk, and a now-deceased relative named Harold. He grew up in this area in the 50s. When he was 16 years old, he encountered a strange-ass child, and no one knew where the kid came from or ever saw him again after this encounter. He was lazily walking home early one evening just before sundown when he reached the fence to his family's property. It was there that leaning against the fence was a young boy he assumed to be around 10 years old just based off of his size. It was a small community and everyone knew everybody, but Harold did not know this boy. He was a friendly teenager and he began talking to the boy, but the boy did not respond. He just stood leaning against the post and looking slightly down towards the ground. Harold kind of thought maybe something was wrong with this boy, so he leaned in closer to get a better look at him. "Hey, you all right?" he asked. At this, the boy finally spoke. "I want to go to your house. Take me to your house."
Okay. You don't want to ask, you just
Don't
want to
demand shit
Okay,
from
that's
me. What the heck? Where have you been living? In Bianca's home? Good grief.
Ma'am, do I ever demand anything from you?
Not
No,
for me,
I do not.
no. Not for me.
Who do I demand from?
I just assume as a child you were demanding little shit. Okay.
Well, I am an only child,
Yeah,
so maybe.
okay. So I was right. Okay, so when this kid said this, Harold felt a strange chill go down his spine at the boy's response. He didn't know what to say to this odd and creepy request. The boy looked up, making eye contact, and it was then that he realized that the boy's eyes were solid black and not a speck of white showed in them. Obviously, at this discovery, Harold's chills became justified and he became scared shitless. Glancing up towards his house, he began to wonder to himself how fast he could run to it. Immediately, the child scowled and said coldly, "Now, don't you run away from me. You're going to walk me to your house." I think the fuck not. Are you kidding
Oh,
me?
am I?
That obviously threatening remark from the creep sent Harold in a mad dash toward his house, too scared to look back to see if the kid was following. Which, that gives me the heebie-jeebies. People chasing me is my absolute I can't. I will fall to the
I don't
ground.
like it.
Maybe if I knew I would really die, it would make a difference. As he was halfway up the driveway, Harold heard a super creepy scream come from behind him that sounded like the scream of a bobcat. Once he reached the house, Harold slammed the door behind him and was clearly out of breath. His parents asked him what was wrong, and he told them every detail of his encounter with the little skeeve. As Harold retold the story, he said he was sure he really angered the boy and that he was coming for him. Thinking he would get to the bottom of things, Harold's dad immediately walked down the driveway with a shotgun in hand, but he found no sign of the boy his son had described. His parents asked him to tell them what had happened one more time, and he did with the exact same details to a T. They believed Harold since he was never one to make up stories or entertain any flight of fancy. So I made a little note because I said hallelujah, because there is nothing that I hate more than when I see stories of a kid being like, you know, claiming to be being attacked in his room by some, ghost man or something. And the parents were like, "You're just imagining it. Go to bed. Stop," like getting in trouble for telling them. Like, I hate that so much. I hate it.
Explain it away.
I really do. It's like, you don't know what could be possibly going on. The fact that you're just dismissing your kid and trying to like say that they're just lying to you. What a way to create trust. It's just that really kills me. Anyway, Harold insisted that the child was solid and was not a ghost. His father didn't know what to make of his story, as growing up in the country, he had heard many bizarre tales, but he had never heard anything about beings with black eyes. His mother simply thought it was the devil, which ruins everything for me, but it's okay. His father asked the neighbors if they had encountered anything similar, and while a few of them reported that they had heard a bobcat recently, no one had seen any out-of-place children. The family decided to keep the story quiet so that the town did not think that they were all crazy, or worse yet, cursed, and they didn't want to do anything to incite the boy to return. Harold contended until the day that he died that he had never been able to forget the image of the boy and his eyes, and he had never encountered anything so sinister as that black-eyed boy in his life, which I'm like, wow, dude. I mean, I think in a decently long life that you encounter a few sinister things, and it's just that little kid, man.
And why would you lie about it until your dying day?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
especially they weren't going, "Everybody listen, gather around," like he told his family, and they passed it down. Right. Yeah. Obviously, considering that black eyes are a natural and creepy as fuck, the natural inclination for us to find beings with black eyes as evil kind of spans across history and many cultures, because, I mean, what the hell is that? Obviously that's understandable. Those were just a few of the more historical stories regarding black-eyed children, but there are much, much more modern-day accounts to discuss. So we're going to now move along to the modern-day stuff. So while the majority of first-hand accounts are from the United States, there have been documented encounters with black-eyed children in the UK, South America, Australia, Canada, Iraq, and many other places. The single most famous black-eyed kid encounter of modern times is from Brian Bethel, who we talked about earlier, and Bianca told you that he's a journalist from Abilene. He posted his story to an internet message board after his encounter, and this is what he said.
So it was 1998 in Abilene, Texas, between 9:30 and 10 p.m. He had gone to a shopping center to drop off a check for his internet bill in an after-hours payment box. He was sitting in his car, writing out his check, when he was startled by a knock on his driver's side window. He looked up and saw two boys who he estimated to be about 10 to 14 years old. At first glance, they seemed normal hair, build, clothes, which were in style for the time. And the first boy had olive skin and dark, medium-length hair, and the second boy had pale skin and orange hair. Initially, he had assumed that the boys would ask for a handout of some kind, but as he had that thought, another feeling came over him, and he said, "Right before I experienced something strange, there is a change in perception that comes about. It's basically enough time to know it's too late."
Ugh.
Which is just, it's that gut feeling of, it's that gut feeling that every human being has.
Yeah. It sounds really similar to the other accounts of black-eyed children, the feeling that something is wrong while everything is seemingly normal on the surface.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Brian said that he felt a panic come over him, but he simultaneously also felt a sense of confusion. And like with many of the encounters, the kids' black eyes weren't noticed right away, because as we said before, when they knock on your door or on the window of your car, they're usually looking down so that they avoid eye contact. So you don't see their black eyes.
Yeah.
In Brian's case, his car was still running, and he felt his fight or flight instincts kicking in, as many others have as well. He cracked his window open very, very slightly and asked the boys what they wanted, and their response was that they had wanted to see a movie but left their money at home.
It was 9:45 at night.
Right.
Okay.
Between 9:30 and 10. So, okay. Whatever.
10-year-old?
I mean,
Sure. Maybe
my
there's
mom
still
would
latchkey kids out there.
Never. My mom would never. Are you kidding me? I wasn't even allowed to sleep over at other kids' houses.
Well,
they wanted Brian to help them out by taking them home to get the cash. And he was hesitant, for good reason, clearly. He said that something about the boys, especially the smile the boy talking to him gave him, made him extremely nervous.
Are you kidding me right now? No, with the smiling. Don't smile at me. Not like a creep. No. Continue.
When he didn't respond, the boy did get a little bit more pushy and said, "Come on," like we said before. "Come on, mister. Now we just want to go to our house and we're just two little boys."
We're just two little boys. Ugh. I will punch you, kid. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I won't.
I might.
They try to convince the adults that they're only kids, implying they're harmless and in need of help. Like, okay, little creeper. Okay.
So, Brian did notice that according to the movie marquee, the last show of the evening had already been playing for an hour.
Okay.
And then they started in again. "Come on, mister, let us in. We can't get in your car until you let us in, you know. Just let us in. We'll be gone before you know it."
We'll be gone before you know it? What is that? What are you trying to do?
I don't like it.
This won't take long. We'll be gone before you know it. What are you trying to insinuate right now?
I don't like it. I don't like it. And then at this point, Brian finally made eye contact with the boys, and that's when he realized their eyes were, as he described, coal black with no pupil, no iris, just two staring orbs reflecting the red and white light of the marquee. No.
Count me out.
I don't like it. As in many of the encounters, the black eyes proved to be the final straw for Brian, and he immediately put his car in drive and sped away from the boys as fast as he could. He stole a quick look back as he did this, but the boys were nowhere to be seen.
Which, I mean, maybe they ran off, but from what I understood about that is that there wasn't, he was in the mall was closed, and they were a bit away, like a kind of away from the movie theater part, which still, it was like, it's Abilene, Texas, in the middle of the summer. There wasn't like a ton of people, at the last showing anyway, but that where he was, there wasn't a lot of cars where they could just like go have darted behind, and somehow they were gone. So cool. Again, I mean, really gives me, I don't know what. So Brian Bethel, he gained so much attention from his story that he actually pulled away from the public eye for years, attempting to put the whole thing behind him. It's only recently that he began to become comfortable again talking about it. And so while skeptics want to say that anyone coming forward with stories of their encounters with black-eyed children are doing so for attention, it's pretty clear in Brian's situation it was the last thing he wanted from telling his story. More than anything, he wanted to try and understand what had happened to him and get a better idea about what he had encountered, which is, completely understandable, because I think anyone can understand, like, if you had that experience, you'd be dying to know what the hell had happened in that situation, And, excuse me, and like on Jim Harold's Campfire, for example, when people call in with their experiences, they always say, "I just want to know if anyone else out there has had an experience similar to this and it has any more answers for me." It's just, that's what people seem to want. I wouldn't know because I've never had any experience, but not trying to incite one here.
So you're saying that the reason that he told his story was just to see if anybody else out there had a similar experience, and he just wants to know. You don't think that he just did it? He just made up a creepypasta story.
Yeah, no, because he wrote it on this was like in the very beginning stages of the internet, and he wanted to see if anyone else had ever had any experience with anything like that in his town, and then it just spread, but he literally didn't talk to anybody for like 20 years about it because he was like so tired of people asking him about it and, you know, skeptics saying he made it up. He just didn't even want to talk about it anymore. But
I was actually listening to a podcast recently about black-eyed kids, maybe a few months ago, and they had mentioned that they had tried to reach out to him, Brian Bethel, through email, and they never received a response. Like, and it had been like 3 months since they had tried to reach out to him, and he's like, I don't.
He wants no part of it.
He wants no part of it.
And while being the most popular, Brian's story isn't even close to being the only modern-day first-hand account of an encounter with black-eyed children. The author, David Weatherly, who wrote the book much of our research came from, titled The Black-Eyed Children, spoke with numerous people regarding their experiences with them. One of the individuals that David spoke with was a man named Paul, and he shared the following story. He says that he got home from work one evening from his job at the local prison. His wife and kids were out of town for a few days, and he was just looking forward to having a low-key, relaxing night at home. As he was standing in the kitchen, he heard a knock at the door, which at first he wasn't sure it was even a knock as it was soft and continuous, and he thought it may just be some other noise coming from outside. So he ignored it and continued searching for dinner, but it then grew louder and he realized it had to be coming from the front door. As he walked towards the door, he glanced out the side window panel and noticed that there were 2 boys around age 14 standing at the door. He opened it and took a closer look at the boys, who he didn't recognize from the neighborhood. Both boys were wearing hoodies and jeans and were standing silently with their eyes cast downward. He said, "I thought something was odd about the scene when neither child said anything when I opened the door. They just stood there with their heads down like you do in the rain, except it wasn't raining." He asked them, "Can I help you?" And he expected the boys to try and sell him something, ask him for help in fundraising efforts, or even that they were at the wrong house. He wasn't expecting their response. The boy that was standing in the forefront kind of smiled, again, and replied, "Hey, we just wanted to stop in for a bit." Paul was obviously confused by this statement. He knew the boys weren't friends of his son's because he didn't know them, but also because his son was much younger than this. After a moment or two, Paul responded, "Do I know you guys? I think maybe you've got the wrong house." The boys didn't react to his comment whatsoever, and after a moment, the boy in the front said, "Oh, well, it's getting kind of late. Can we come in for a bit?" Again, this was another weird response that left Paul unsure how to respond. He said something was causing the hair on the back of my neck to go up. He recalled, "I felt like this kid was ignoring me and focusing on me all at the same time. It just made no sense. Why in hell would a couple of kids show up at a stranger's door and want to come in?" Which I said, good question, Paul, unless, they're trying to catch a predator on you or something, That's the one thing I kept thinking. This is like, don't try to catch a predator me, you creep. I'm not letting you in.
I can't.
After alarm bells went off in his head, he began to look at the boys more closely. He shifted his stance a bit to get a better look at the two, and it was then that he realized that both of the boys' eyes were solid black. Then the lead boy looked up directly at Paul and spoke again. This time, with much more insistence, his voice suddenly seemed threatening.
There it is, that anger when they find out that you found them out.
Right.
Oh, I hate it.
I hate it. So the boy said, "It would be good if you just let us come in now. You don't have to think about it. Just open the door and ask us in."
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh.
So Paul said he felt paralyzed and started to think that maybe he should just let them in. Then the boy spoke again. "It's okay. This won't take long." Okay, Paul says that comment jerked him from his seemingly paralyzed state, and he felt his fight or flight response kick in. He slammed the door shut, shouting to the boys to get off his porch, feeling like he had to lean against the door to keep them from trying to push in. Oh, God. I mean, this is a grown man who works in a prison. He locked the deadbolt and stood there, trying to calm himself down. Then there came a long, steady knock on the door. The boys still wanted in. Paul said he realized he'd been sitting there squeezing his eyes shut, and he didn't know what to do with himself. Part of his brain was telling him he was acting crazy, while the other half was telling him to run and hide. This is a grown man. I'm just like, oh my God. That's got to be terrifying if that's the case. You know, he slowly walked away from the door and turned around halfway to look towards the entrance of his home. There, staring through the side panel window, was the face of one of the boys, his black eyes staring directly at Paul.
Fuck you. Absolutely not. Nope. Absolutely not. No.
As they made eye contact, the boy raised his hand and began tapping on the glass.
No! Stop!
Paul took a deep breath and felt his anger begin to rise. He was pissed and he was going to defend his property. He went and retrieved a gun, which, I mean, I was like, this is extreme, man. But he went and retrieved a gun, loading it, and flung the door open to confront the kids, but they were nowhere in sight. He searched the front, the back, the driveway, the garage, and even went up and down the street, but he saw no sign of the boys. He said that night he couldn't sleep, that he just laid there thinking about them. He walked the house numerous times, checking doors and windows, making sure everything was undisturbed. I mean, I can only imagine that you would almost feel like, did they get in? You know?
Yeah,
like,
hell yeah. Like, oh, you wanted in so bad.
There was a million places you could have gotten in.
You can go into the attic, if there's an attic. I don't know if they have basements here, but, you know.
I'm telling you right now, I'm goosebumpy. I don't like it. So, okay. I mean, what if... whatever. I can't even imagine how you could even sleep, because you would just be like, I'm going to open my eyes and they're going to be standing right in front of me when I'm... Okay, sorry everybody for your nightmares that you're going to have. The next day, Paul asked his neighbors if they had seen these kids, but no one had. And even years later, retelling the story to David Weatherly, he was obviously super shook up about it. And he said, "It's those eyes. I've never been able to really get them out of my head." We'll talk about it more later, but it's almost like once you encounter these beings, they like imprint themselves in your memory or your mind or something. It's almost like they find a way to get in some other way.
Gross.
You know what I mean?
I don't like it.
So you said you had a story from the UK. Why don't you tell that one? We've got a bunch, but let's just, let's just tell a bunch of them.
Okay. So although black-eyed children are predominantly mentioned in the United States, there have also been reported sightings in the United Kingdom. From an article in November of 2014, in the UK, states Lee Brickley is scouring the Staffordshire beauty spot of Cannock Chase after receiving claims the girl who has coal black pits for eye sockets is making appearances again some 30 years after she was first spotted.
Okay.
On September 13th, my wife and I were walking through Cannock Chase near to Stile Cop with our dog. Once we had entered the woodland and the road was no longer visible, we started to hear the giggling noise of a little girl.
Come on.
I don't like it.
Giggling.
To our amazement, a child, no taller than 1 meter in height, appeared as if out of nowhere, further up the path in front of us. We stopped dead in our tracks after noticing her eyes had no color. Her head was tilted to the side in much the same way it would appear if she had been hung.
Can we not with this? This isn't... Good Christ.
She stared at us for around 5 minutes before running away into a densely grouped area of trees. My wife wanted to follow her, but I was having none of it.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
Also, around 2 months ago, so this was July, he stated around 2 months ago, so in May, my daughter and I were walking through Birches Valley, which is an area well known in the United Kingdom for its spectral sightings, when we heard the screams of a young child. I couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl, but they definitely seemed in distress and sounded very close to us, so we instantly started running towards the noise. No, don't run towards it.
I'm like, what?
We couldn't find the child anywhere, and so stopped to catch our breath. And that's when I turned around and saw a girl standing behind me, no more than 10 years old, with her hands over her eyes, like she was waiting for a birthday cake.
Oh my God.
I asked if she was okay, and if she had been the one screaming. But then she put her arms down by her side and opened her eyes, which is when I saw that they were completely black. No iris, no white, nothing. I jumped back,
Sorry.
grabbed my daughter, and when I looked again, the child was gone. It was strange, really. I knew something was going to happen even before it did. I just had a weird feeling. He told the Huffington Post, UK, in my opinion, the black-eyed child seems to be some kind of demon. While it might seem like a standard spectral encounter, almost all the reports involve the child leading people towards potentially dangerous situations.
So this is like another one of those times where some of the details are different than like the very, very common ones, but then there's also
But then there are correlations.
well, yeah, obviously, like the bringing fear, and eliciting fear in these people, and I'm just wondering what their purpose is with just showing up and surprising people like this. I don't know. I just like, because what do they want? Well, anyway, while it's difficult to find much correlation between the witnesses of these beings, there are an overwhelming number of people in authority or service-oriented roles, such as nurses, firefighters, law enforcement, government employees, and members of the military. And these jobs do typically require long hours and are high-stress positions, so there may be a correlation between working conditions and paranormal encounters. I know that, Cody and I are the OG, I don't think we're OG, but we're like the two greatest fans of that show, The Haunting. I think it's what that's called. Oh, shit. The one that was on Sci-Fi, and they recreated different people's experiences, and then they talked to them, like kind of wove it together, like their recreations, and then just them talking to the real person. Anyway, it's the best paranormal show ever. And on that show, there are always like police officers or people in the military or nurses or people just like in those kinds of positions, and so it does, who see ghosts and stuff. So it does make me wonder, I guess you could say maybe they're exhausted and and I don't know, but also I think you might be able to say that they're working, their brains are working on a different wavelength or something. Who knows what this means. So anyway, so although you might think that these types of people would be more composed when encountering something of this type, most of these people who encounter black-eyed children react just as everyone else does, with intense fear and panic that elicits the fight or flight response, and are left haunted by what they experienced. The following two stories from people in these positions are some of the most compelling that you can find. So, here's the first one, is this man named John. John had enlisted in the military straight out of high school and had been serving for over 7 years. He considered himself level-headed, logical, and never had any interest in the paranormal. His family were Texans going way back many generations, and each time he got leave from the military, he'd go back and visit relatives all over the state. In 2009, he went home to visit his parents in the Houston area. After spending a couple days with them, he decided to drive west to visit his cousins and headed off in the night, as he loved to drive the long Texas roads at night. He said that the night was clear and he took his time on his drive, as there are a lot of deer on the road and he didn't want to hit any of them. And so it wasn't like he was going, 90 miles an hour. He was just kind of taking his time, enjoying the view. He said the stars were very bright and it was just a nice evening. Around 3 a.m, he hit a long stretch of road in western Texas where houses are few and far between. Seeing there were no cars coming for miles, he decided to pull over to take a pee, going a few paces away from the road to do so. He stretched out a bit and then looked up at the stars for what he says couldn't have been more than 5 minutes, and that's when he began to head back towards his truck. He says his eyes had adjusted to the dark well enough that he was able to spot a rabbit he frightened as he walked. He passed the front of his truck and went to open the driver's side handle when he got the shock of a lifetime noticing a young boy standing before it. He jerked back with a start upon realizing that there was someone standing so close by. About the boy, he said, "He didn't move a muscle. I think if my eyes hadn't been adjusted to the dark, I probably wouldn't have even seen him. I realized right away that it was just a kid, and that made me calm down a bit. I shook my head and said, 'Geez, kid, you scared the hell out of me.' This kid, he didn't miss a beat. He says to me, I want to get in your truck.
Oh,
I didn't.
oh you do? Okay.
Okay. Sure thing. I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't sure what to say, to tell you the truth. He says that when he heard the boy's statement, a cold chill went down his back. His mind was racing as he tried to piece together where the boy had even come from. He glanced around in each direction, looking for any sign of a house or a car, but there was nothing to be seen. This was literally in the middle of nowhere. The boy still hadn't moved a muscle, and again said coldly, I want to get in your truck now. John says he had a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach, and his hair stood on end. He tried to talk himself out of the fear he was feeling, but he says he could not shake the weird feeling he had, and it just kept getting stronger. He tried to smile and engage the boy to find out why he was stuck out here all alone on a long, desolate road in the middle of the night, and he asked him, You live around here, kid? The boy stood totally still and responded in the same monotone voice. Just let me get in your truck. We can go for a ride. He asked him, Do you need to get home, kid? Whereabouts do you live? The boy remained planted in his spot and said, Just let me get in your truck now. It won't take too long. I'm like, what won't take too long,
Right.
dude?
That's exactly what I was thinking. What's not going to... What?
You're going to suck my brain out of my body through my nose or something? Like, get away. So John leaned forward to get a closer look at the boy, and he estimated that from his height and size that he was about 10. He was wearing a dull white shirt that was too big for him, and it looked like hand-me-downs. The shirt was tucked into his dark trousers, his hair was dark and shaggy, and he couldn't see many other details due to the low light. His skin, though, was very light and pale, and showed up really well in the limited light of the night, and I guess from the moonlight. While the kid still had not moved, which is also quite bizarre, it's been a while, he again repeated his request, sounding more insistent this time. Just open the door and tell me to get in. We'll have a short ride.
About him not moving, like, when you think of kids, honestly, like, when I think of kids, I think of, like, little fidgety, like, they're fidgety, like, they move, they mess with their hands, like, you know what I mean?
A little anxiety me.
Exactly. It's me, miniature.
Right.
It's fine.
But for sure. And also, we'll have a short ride. I feel like you're trying to get me arrested. I don't know, man. It just sounds so strange.
Yeah, no, I don't like it.
So John says he felt like he wanted to run and leave the boy and his truck as far behind as he could. He said, I realized I was squinting my eyes, and I felt like I was trying to shake off a punch or something. It was a funny feeling. I knew right then that I had to get out of there. He said to the boy, I don't think so, kid, and opened his door, keeping his eyes on the boy the whole time. He quickly jumped in his truck, slamming the door behind him, and started it. He turned to look out his driver's side window, and he said that the boy was suddenly, like, right up on it, peering at him.
No.
That is the worst thing ever. That is the worst thing ever.
I got a pit in my stomach thinking about that. Absolutely not.
I think I've had a pit in my stomach this whole time.
Okay.
So I'm like, I have a weird feeling right now. Is this because I have a black-eyed child out on the porch right now, or what? No. So John says that he has never felt that kind of fear in his life. Okay, he's a grown man. He's in the military. He's done some stuff, and he has never felt that kind of fear in his life by this little boy standing beside his window. So he floored the gas and drove off like a bat out of hell. A couple miles down the road, he pulled over at a rest stop, and he realized that he'd been gripping the wheel so tightly that his knuckles were white, and he was nearly hyperventilating. He was breathing so fast. So he took a deep breath and began to feel ridiculous. What the hell was he doing running from a child that needed help? What if he really badly needed some help? Like, what kind of guy am I? So something had elicited a very primal response within him, and he could not figure out what it was. He decided to turn the truck around and go back to the spot where he had encountered the boy. Talk about some serious morbid curiosity there.
No, you couldn't pay me enough to go back to find that.
No. He found the exact spot that he'd pulled over. He got out with a flashlight, and he searched the area as thoroughly as possible. As he stood on the dark road, his mind flashed back to the boy standing at his driver's window, staring at him through it, and he got that feeling all over again. He jumped in his truck and took off, deciding to forego the breakfast stop that he had planned to make, and he drove straight through until he reached his final destination. He says that all he wanted to do was get that kid out of his mind, but the image of him just kept popping up, the black eyes peering at him through the window. On his way back to Houston a few days later, he made a point to make the journey during the daytime. Again, he found the spot he'd encountered the boy at, and the nearest homes were at least a few miles away, well off the beaten path.
Stop going back.
I know. I'm like, are you asking for it or what, John? Oh, even in the daytime, John did not want to linger long at that spot or let the sun begin to descend at all while he was there. In fact, after that, he stopped driving at night altogether, which, I mean, it really did something to him.
Oh my God,
So,
altogether.
it's serious, altogether. He says, I've never really gotten that image out of my head. I get rid of it for a while, but it always seems to come back around. Maybe there's some explanation, but there was nowhere for that boy to get to, nowhere for him to hide, and I don't know how he made me feel so damn scared. He didn't really do anything, and it doesn't make sense to me. While John had always thought his military training had prepared him for anything, he found himself woefully unprepared for the late-night encounter with that creepy little boy in the middle of nowhere in West Texas that evening. No, thank you.
No. And then why would you go back twice? I can't.
You know what, though? I mean, I gotta say, I don't know, man. If something like that happened to me, I might be so curious about it. Because I'm already so curious about it. I'm like, I might be so curious about it that I'm do something stupid.
I'm curious about it, but like from afar. Like, okay, let me read about it. Cool. If it happens to me, I'm not gonna do that whole thing again. Like, I can't.
I think you're right, but I'm just like, who knows?
Me. That's
man?
me though. You are much. I think you're much braver than I am because I'm
Braver.
absolutely a child when it comes to that.
Oh, are you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, are you being sarcastic? Okay, cool.
No, I'm not. I'm being serious.
Like, I wouldn't go back to the spot. I'd be like, oh, okay, that happened. All right.
So, would you go to like Skinwalker Ranch and stuff?
Oh, wait.
Or would you say no to that?
Well, I'd say yes to it if we could go.
Well, somebody.
But not if I had like an experience like that with black-eyed children and feeling that fear. Like, say if we could go to Skinwalker Ranch, like I'd do it.
Fresh little
but
chickens.
If something happened, I'd be like,
You
out.
would nope the fuck right out. Okay.
oh, I'd nope right the fuck on out of there.
All right. Well, okay. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll talk about this anyway. So, another story. David Weatherly also spoke with a sheriff's deputy from Kansas City, Missouri, and was immediately impressed with his no-nonsense attitude and direct response to his questions, giving him specific details in a very clear and concise way. Are the Death by Champagne girls from Kansas City, Missouri? I think they might be.
I think they're from
St. Louis. St. Louis, Missouri. Okay. He had spent this deputy had spent many years in his profession as the sheriff's deputy. He had been a non-believer in the paranormal up until his encounter with two black-eyed children that he has not been able to explain since it occurred in 2003. The deputy says that he received a call on a domestic disturbance just after 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Once he reached the neighborhood, he found the argument had quieted down and spoke with the parties involved, making no arrests, and he returned to his car that was parked on the side of the street, obviously, in front of the house. He sat in his vehicle for a bit, filling out the necessary paperwork and radioing it in. He glanced up and noticed that someone was standing on the porch a couple houses down from where he was parked. The porch light was on, and he could tell that they were quite young. So he got out of his car and began to approach, and as he did, he realized they were two very young kids. And I was like, you're kind of a busybody, dude. Like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if you should be inspecting every child that's out at 2 a.m. on their own porch, but okay, regardless. He says that he was concerned that the two youngins were out so late, so he called out to them. He says that they did not respond, even though they were looking in his direction, and he continued to speak to them as he approached. He asked, "You kids all right? Did the noise wake you up?" The porch had a railing that ran all the way around it with the steps that led up on the right-hand side. He climbed the steps and looked closely at the kids, one boy and one girl. He guessed their ages to be between 8 and 10, and the boy appeared slightly older. He says that the light on the porch was pretty bright, and he was able to get a good look at the kids. Their clothing looked old, possibly handmade, and they had very pale complexions. He tried to speak to them again, but they still wouldn't answer his questions. They just stood there in the middle of the porch. He bent down a bit closer to the kids. He asked them again if they needed help. There was a pause, but finally the boy responded, "We want to go inside." The deputy said it sounded like he had an accent, but not one that he could place. He said, "He looked straight at me, and it was then that I realized that this wasn't just the light. These kids had completely black eyes." He says he'd never seen anything like this before, and he wondered if perhaps the kids were on drugs. I hope not at 8 years old, but I guess it happens.
I mean, okay.
"Why did you kids come outside? Did the noise wake you up?" he asked again. The boy responded again, "They won't let us inside." The deputy says he felt very disturbed by the behavior of these children. He wondered if they were mentally ill. Perhaps this was an abuse situation. He said that they did look rather pale and maybe they were malnourished. But he also said that something was setting off his warning signals, and it was though he wasn't exactly sure what was wrong, which that is a common theme. He wanted to get some answers from the homeowner, so he opened the screen door and knocked on the front door, identifying himself as an officer with the sheriff's department. There were no lights on in the house, and the kids just stood there side by side, staring at him. They hadn't budged the entire time he was talking to them. What again? He waited a moment, and he knocked again, this time louder. He was going to get to the bottom of this strange situation. He was determined. He knocked a third time, calling loudly and identifying himself again, requesting the occupants open up. When he glanced back to the kids, he realized they were gone. He said, "The porch wasn't that big, and they couldn't have moved past me because I was blocking the steps while holding the door open. They would have had to have climbed the railing and jumped into the yard. I turned my flashlight on and searched the yard, but the whole front yard with my light. There were no trees, and nothing could have hidden the children, but they had just vanished." The front door then opened up, and an elderly woman stood before him in her nightgown. She had clearly been asleep. He questioned her about the children, and she assured him that she lived alone and had no children or grandchildren. He described the kids to her, and she didn't believe it matched the description of any of the neighborhood kids. He said he searched the front and backyard, as well as those of the adjoining properties, and also cruised the surrounding blocks, but he found no sign of the kids anywhere. He said he then checked later with CPS, figuring that they may be in the system, but there was no such luck. He never saw the kids again. And he says, "I still go back to the neighborhood on occasion. I've cruised around it during the day and late at night. I've even went back in the early morning hours to see if those children were out again by chance. I feel like I'll never get a satisfactory answer as to where those kids came from." They just seem to kind of haunt you afterwards, dude.
Yeah. They always disappear.
I would rather barf. So, one other story that we will read today is about a man, John, who encountered some black-eyed children at his hotel room in Hawaii, and he said that they came knocking on his door and wanted to come in to watch television, which is so bizarre. He asked them why they didn't go to their own room, and they wouldn't answer him. They just kept repeating the same things over and over without breaking rhythm. He said he thought it was some kind of joke until one of the boys told him, "Just let us in, it won't take long." At which point he slammed the door in their faces, and he realized that he was shaking. And again, this guy John was plagued by this situation forever. Mm-hmm. He just is haunted by it. He thinks it's like the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to him. He has dreams about it. He hates, it's terrible. So it's like, I don't know what it is that they do to you, but they find a way to get in there and keep getting you for like the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed that we don't have encounters with these guys.
So even though the stories that we discussed today were people who didn't answer the door for these black-eyed children, we wanted to definitely have a second episode in which we do discuss what happens when you do open your door for the black-eyed kids.
Yes, because there are actually people who have done it and have recounted their experience.
So that's something that I was reading and I was like, oh, this is disgusting. Like, that's what freaked me out, is not the initial fear of meeting these things, these entities, but what happens when you do allow it to come in.
Right. Yikes-a-doodle.
Did you just say yikes-a-doodle?
Yeah.
Oh, that's my favorite thing. I'm so excited to start using that.
Okay. So not only are we going to talk about what happens when you let these little bitches in next episode, but we're also going to talk about some theories about what they could be, some skeptics' point of view, some other related situations that, you know, it's kind of theories. It's kind of what are other, you know, paranormal beings or something that you want, whatever you want to call them, entities, whatever, that these could all be. What is this? And again, we're going to have me going on about my theories on, I can't even tell you yet, actually. Just stay tuned.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to talk about the thing that we want to talk about at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Anyway, I'm just so happy that we got to do this episode. So we're done for now. Stay tuned next week, and you'll hear what happens if you're silly enough to let these things in, and other tales. We appreciate your listening. We love you. Keep listening. We love it.
Where can they find us, Ashley?
Let's see. You can find us on Instagram at CreepItRealPod. You can also find us on Twitter sometimes at CreepItRealPod. And you can simply search on Facebook for Creep It Real Podcast, and you can find us there. And through that, you can also find the Creep It Real Podcast Hangout. We're also on Patreon at Creep It Real Pod. And if you are a patron at any level, you get early access to episodes, but also a sticker and some other stuff that we're working on. But, you know,
and
so
there's some other things that we're thinking about doing.
Well, for sure.
And
creeping
the
up
stuff. Yeah.
And then some other really exciting, but we can't just start talking about it yet. So
no, we can't. Also, we would sincerely appreciate if you went onto iTunes right quick and rated and reviewed us. Yeah, it would be very helpful. 5 stars would be astounding.
Yeah, we got some new. No, you're good. We got some new reviews this week, and everybody's been really kind. It's always nice whenever I don't have to read a negative, but yeah, we love all the reviews. It's so much appreciated, and you know, I think you can do it on iTunes, but I think you can also do it on Spotify, maybe on Stitcher. I'm not sure about that one, but it's just, we super appreciate it big time. And you know what else you could do that would be great to support us is just share the podcast with anybody that you think might enjoy us. Share an episode, share a link to our social media, whatever you want to do to spread the word about Creep It Real. We would appreciate so much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm giving some sort of presidential speech or something. Thank you. Like a address to the nation. But anyway, yeah, so thanks so much. We're coming back at you very soon. We're going to record part 2 next week. So get ready for back-to-back episodes, my babies. And hopefully you guys... We
can't keep you hanging too long.
No, and especially with this one, I'm so antsy in the pantsies to talk about it again. So... Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this intro to Black-Eyed Children, and also, I'm sorry if you're now terrified to go to sleep, or have someone knock on your door, or look out a window, or open your eyes when you're laying in bed, or anything else. I'm sorry. But I do love you.
Or to see children on the street.
Or to encounter children at all anymore. or if your own children are now causing you extreme fear. You're like, thanks so much that now when my kid has to pee in the middle of the night and comes to stand outside of my bed, I wake up with a startle.
Oh no, I didn't even think about
I'm sorry, guys, but you know what? It's healthy. I think it's healthy to get this adrenaline going and get scared. Just make sure that you adjust to the darkness when you first open your eyes. You know, make sure it's your kid, and then take it to the bathroom. You know,
just take it to the bathroom.
Well, it could be a boy or girl. Just
make sure you watch some eye bleach.
Yeah.
After maybe some cartoons on
eye bleach.
Netflix, some Tom and Jerry.
We're not giving them a visual presentation here. They need to.
Well, let me tell you something.
They need to listen.
Listened to episodes in the beginning, I was like, need to watch some cartoons to get my mind the fuck off of it.
Yeah, cereal and cartoons. Okay, all right, guys. We'll see you soon. We love ya. Keep it real. Keep it real out there. Keep it real.